Hey guys, what the fuck is up, you guys? My name is eManDan642, and welcome to the final Radiohead review. This is their newest album, their 9th studio album, released in 2016. This album was a pretty big change of pace from their last album, The King of Limbs, which if you haven't seen that review of mine, I thought it was pretty underwhelming and Radiohead's worst album. This album isn't one of their greatest, but it isn't one of their worst. It's still a great album, though. Impressive that a band with so much time under their belt can put out such a great album. I know I said the same thing for In Rainbows, but this album came out another 9 years later. Not many bands could put out an album like this after so many years. Even more surprising is that this album, like many before it, again redefines the band's sound. This is definitely a slower, much more somber album. It's a much more organic album that has much more feeling and emotion, just like the band is playing all around you. A Moonshaped Pool has a very heavy focus on string instruments and orchestral sounds. Jonny Greenwood does an amazing job on all of the strings. It adds so much depth to this album. The strings, along with the choir, give this album this haunting yet beautiful feeling. I think this album's instrumentals are some of the best of Radiohead's. Tom's vocals are still great, but in most songs they kind of fell to the side in favor of the beautiful arrangements, and I think it was very intentional. The last album, The King of Limbs, lacked emotion and feeling. Every song was formulaic and focused on a simple looping sample. But this album is the opposite. The instrumentals is where this album truly shines. This is the softest and quietest album by the band so far. And as much as I love the heavier moments of the band's career and heavier music in general, I love the direction that this album goes in. It's mature. It's understanding. Similar to how I felt with In Rainbows, but even more so in this album. This album has a very vast and spacey sound to it, but it's still very layered and dense at the same time, with a lot of different instruments and sounds happening at the same time. It's a painfully sad album with very few later, happier moments. Sadness is nothing new to Radiohead. It's present on every single one of their albums, but it's definitely the most present on this album. This album follows Thom Yorke's divorce with his wife in 2015, after being together for 23 years. That is a heavy burden on Tom, and you could definitely see that in the music and lyrics, along with themes of nature and other imagery sprinkled all around the album. To me, all of these songs work really well together as an album, but I honestly wouldn't listen to many of them outside of the album. Don't get me wrong, they are all really good songs, but it's unlikely that I'd solely want to listen to any of these outside the album. I feel you should judge a song on its own merits and not in comparison to others, but I feel that most of these songs I wouldn't listen to on their own because they're just better Radiohead songs. Honestly, this is on like the lower half of the Radiohead albums, which says a lot about this band because I still think this is an amazing album. The songs were not as interesting as many other Radiohead songs, but this album as a whole was really interesting and engaging. The opener, Burn the Witch, is a great start, showing off these beautiful flowing strings. It's a much more uplifting song than the rest of the album. It gives you the feeling of soaring and flying. Daydreaming is a beautiful song. The piano is amazing. It's a very minimal song, but it's still very effective. I love this instrumental. It gives me feelings of euphoria and inner peace. Like I am one with the world and the world is one with me. The song ends with these creepy noises for an outro, before going into Deck's Dark. Again, this is a very beautiful song with a soothing piano melody over a catchy, repetitive drum beat. One issue with the album is some of the songs blend together too much. Half of them are piano ballads. They are all great, but it is still an issue I faced. Full Stop is a interesting song. It feels very similar to what you'd hear off of King of Limbs, with a drum loop repeating the whole song. But this song keeps it interesting and keeps you on your feet, with that wavy guitar repeating in the background and Tom's sporadic, anxious vocals singing about messing something up. Not sure what it means, but throughout the song, Tom repeats the lines, "Truth will mess you up, truth will mess you up," and later in the song, "You really messed up." Glass Eyes is another beautiful ambient piano ballad. It's quite short at just under 3 minutes, but it's still really good. It has these points where the music swells up and then dies down, then back up. The strings are used perfectly in this song. Tom sings about this isolation and paranoia he feels at a train station. The song's about a open-ended journey almost. Like Tom is aimlessly walking with no end goal in mind. He is just walking and walking. He is amongst nature and away from the deadpan, emotionless people that he was surrounded by in the first verse. He isolates himself to rid of the pain brought by everybody and everything. Identikit is another King of the Limbs style track with another looping drum beat. This one's certainly not as good as Full Stop, but it's still better than King of Limbs. This track uses very indie-styled synthesizers, and it sounds so cool, but it's only used in one part of the song and never again. The outro feels this really cool guitar melody that sounds oddly out of place, but like it's meant to be there. It's like someone playing in the background, but it's really good nonetheless. The Numbers starts out with this freestyled piano melody, then develops into this folky style. The instrumental is nothing all too special to me, but the lyrics were really interesting. There are themes of protesting, which is odd considering how subtle the instrumental is, and how much of a relaxing song where you just don't pay attention to the lyrics and just relax to the song. It's the type of lyrics you'd hear off of Hail to the Thief, a very politically charged album. But this is a very chill folk song, not the type of stuff you'd hear off of Hail to the Thief. The song is a lot more subtle. The album's closer, True Love Waits, is a hauntingly beautiful song. This song has been around since 1995, and this version was its first studio release. This is a soul-crushing song about wanting someone you love so bad that you hurt yourself and waste time and energy for someone. It's a very subtle ending to a very subtle album, but it's effective at making you really think about what Tom is singing about. It leaves you dissatisfied, but in a good way. It leaves you off with this really heavy, depressing topic. And the album just ends with this, and you are left to ponder what it all means. A Moon-Shaped Pool is a beautiful, serene album that evolves the sound of Radiohead to new and exciting places. It's an album that leaves you thinking after it's over. An album that may not be too complex, but more of a feel-good album. And it definitely does make you feel good. I'm going to give Radiohead's A Moon-Shaped Pool an 8 out of 10. Whew. Since this is the most recent Radiohead album, I'm going to rank all 9 of their albums. I really don't feel like explaining why I put the albums in the order I did. If you want to know, then go watch the reviews for them yourself. I know many people have many different opinions on how the albums should be placed, so if anyone out there cares, then leave your own ranking in the comments below. At number 9 is The King of Limbs. I will say, though, this album is last because this album had no real impact on the band. They just moved forward and made a much better album. This album was and will be largely forgotten about. At number 8 is Pablo Honey. Number 7 is Amnesiac. Number 6 is A Moon-Shaped Pool. Number 5 is Hail to the Thief. Number 4 is The Bends. Number 3 is In Rainbows. Number 2 is Kid A. And number 1 is OK Computer. Yes, I know this album is the most popular to put as their best, but fuck you. This is the greatest album ever made. I sincerely mean that. To anyone out there who likes music in general, Radiohead is a must listen. They are an amazing band and make amazing music. This is a band that will live on forever. And this has been Radiohead's A Moon-Shaped Pool. Fuck you.